Hello everyone and welcome back to BSc Honours Forensic Science, Forensic Toxicology course BBS08T2111. My name is Dr. Raisha Jasmine Nathan and I will be talking about scope of toxicology in today's presentation. A quick recap of what we discussed in the last class. Toxicology was introduced as a science, a separate field. The terminologies used in toxicology, the basic concepts of exposure, adverse effects, routes of exposure, and LD50 values were discussed. The difference between exposure and adverse effects is important to understand, and also important is the concept of LD50 that is determined by several factors, including the species of the organism, the route of exposure, and other factors. The objectives of this presentation are to understand what toxicology is by definition, the relationship of this science to similar sounding, similar looking sciences, and to understand the scope of toxicology. Starting with the definition of toxicology. In simple terms, it can be defined as the branch of science that deals with the study of poisons. We've discussed this before, that a poison is any substance that can cause harmful effects in an organism, either intentionally or by accident. Now, this effect is seen in certain chemicals while it is absent in others. We've studied that the dose determines the poison. Therefore, anything and everything can be a poison. What determines its toxicity is the dose at which it is administered. Now, coming to the types of toxins. Toxins can either be exogenous or endogenous. Exogenous meaning originating from outside the normal metabolism of an organism. Endogenous meaning it is produced inside the body of the organism which it is affecting. Now, examples of exogenous compounds or exogenous toxins are many. All foreign compounds that are not required by the body for any useful process are termed as xenobiotics. Examples include heavy metals such as arsenic, lead, cadmium, mercury, pesticides, organophosphates, organochlorines, and many more. These compounds are definitely not required by the body for its normal functioning, hence termed as xenobiotics. Because their source is outside the body of the organism, they are categorized as exogenous toxins. On the other hand, certain compounds, certain chemicals that the body of an organism is capable of producing, such as certain hormones, metabolic intermediates, metabolic products. These are produced inside the body of an organism, and at higher doses, these are toxic to the organism. Thyroxine, glutamate are two examples given on this slide. Coming next to the relationship of toxicology to other sciences. Quite often, toxicology is confused with pharmacology. Clearly speaking, pharmacology is a science that deals mainly with medicines or chemicals or compounds or molecules or substances that have a therapeutic value. Meaning to say, pharmacology studies only those compounds that can be used by the body to treat a particular condition. On the other hand, when we are talking about toxicology, it deals with any kind of an effect that is produced by a toxin or a compound or a chemical, whether positive or negative. Toxic is anything that produces an adverse effect. So mainly in the field of toxicology, we study those elements or compounds that produce an adverse effect. However, roughly speaking, we can consider pharmacology to be a subset of toxicology. However, these two are distinct fields and must not be confused with each other. Toxicology can also be related to two fields of applied biology. Number one, medicine, and number two, agriculture. Medicine, we all know, is the field of science that deals with the clinical diagnosis, treatment, and management of poisoning cases. A person falls sick, he goes to the doctor to get better. Medicines are given, prescribed to the patient. He takes those medicines, gets well, and continues. So this part of the science that is involved right from the time of detecting the medical condition to the time of treatment, and even after treatment, the symptoms that may reoccur. All this is studied in the field of medicine. Again, comparing it with toxicology. Toxicology is the study of adverse effects, the reasons, causes, the process, and everything associated with the condition. So medicine has to do with treatment, whereas toxicology does not really care about the treatment part. agriculture, or rather agricultural science dealing with the development of pesticides, insecticides, herbicides, nematicides, fungicides, and any kind of chemicals that are sprayed on crops to prevent them from getting affected by microorganisms or insects or animals. All those studies are done in agriculture. Again, comparing it with toxicology, toxicology does not care about just the pesticides. There are a number of toxins that are studied apart from pesticides in toxicology. We've got drugs, alcohol, metals, industrial poisons, natural poisons, plant poisons, animal poisons, and many more. Now, toxicology can also be considered an area of fundamental biology. What is fundamental biology? It has to do with the evolution and ecology, the development of biology or bio. So, the organisms, when they are exposed or put in toxic environments, how they deal with it, such are the cases studied in fundamental biology. Again, toxicology is not limited to just the exposure to a toxic environment. There are other things we study in toxicology as well. Finally, chemistry, physical chemistry, organic chemistry, analytical chemistry, inorganic chemistry, biochemistry. We use all such concepts in these fields to study toxicology. Therefore, these are very closely related to, but not exactly the same as is toxicology. Now, coming to the scope of toxicology, which is the last topic in this presentation, it is a multidisciplinary science and it deals with the harmful actions, adverse effects of chemical substances on biological material. The scope is very wide, but basically there are three categories or three sciences or three fields that toxicology is most used in. The first is environmental science that deals with pollution, residues, industrial hygiene, gases, industrial effluents, etc. Economic toxicology that deals with trade, where money is involved, when commerce is happening, the sale of medicines, food additives, pesticides, dyestuffs, chemicals, anything that is manufactured in the industries and then sold off to determine the toxic levels, the safe standards, the safety measures before it is used by the consumer. All these things are studied in economic toxicology, or rather toxicology has use of in this field. Last but not the least, we've got forensic toxicology that we are interested in as forensic science scholars. Forensic science has to do with the investigation of a case of suicide, homicide, accident by the ingestion or by exposure to any toxic material, and then later those samples are collected, sent to the toxicology lab. Analytical chemistry is used to determine what kind of toxins were present in the sample, and reports are sent to the court as legal evidence. A few practice questions for you based on this presentation. Elaborate on the use of toxicology in forensic investigations and differentiate between exogenous and endogenous toxins. Some of the references that I have taken for this presentation. Thank you so much for joining me today. Hope to see you in the next class.